Thank you for joining us on the People's Playbook Podcast. I'm pretty stoked today. We have Drew Gillett, who is the VP of Marketing at Guild Mortgage, where he actually has the opportunity and the privilege to lead a large-scale marketing team supporting thousands of loan officers across the very highly regulated industry. Drew is known for building trust, driving culture, and developing leaders at scale and helping people show up with clarity, which we all want, and confidence. So they show up and they're ready to play. Drew, welcome to the pod.
Happy to be here, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Drew, you've led a lot of teams, and the key word that I said there earlier is you've had the ability and the fortunate opportunity to impact thousands of people, right? What is the first people decision you get right before you even start to worry about results?
Let's see. So when I'm hiring somebody, I want to hire leaders. I want to hire people who are going to grow in their career. And so what I look for first is, do they have an ownership mentality? And do they have EQ, right? Do they have the right behaviors?
Yeah.
So I look for people who can execute and who are emotionally safe to work for, right? Because if somebody hits numbers, but everybody hates working with them, it's not going to work. It's a net negative at scale. Results matter, but it's a multiplier.
Yeah. Now, you said people that think like an owner. Go into that a little deeper. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So an ownership mentality to me is somebody who gets a task and they're not just going to check the box. They want to understand, like, why does this need to happen? What happens if it goes wrong? How do I make sure that what I'm executing is what they're asking for, independent of what they said?
Okay, yeah. And you can see that through their behaviors and just how they act on a daily, quite frankly, an hourly basis, right?
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about ownership and we talk about people behaving that way, lots of times, and through conversations you and I have had, you talked about giving leaders the autonomy they need to actually lead and do what they need to do, right? So how do you decide where freedom ends and accountability begins based on that kind of thought process?
Sure. So accountability begins when there's an owner and a date. So who's going to get it done and when are they going to get it done by? The freedom part is, how are you going to get it done? So for me, it's all about communication when it comes back to communicating. I'm going to do this. Somebody else is going to do this. They're going to do it by X date. And it doesn't stop there. The communication continues throughout until whatever the task is done. And so if it's going to be late, if it's going to be early, communicate that as soon as you know it.
Yeah, it's funny how when we increase our communication, our trust actually increases as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't trust you, I probably don't communicate as much as I need to with you. If I do trust you, I'll over communicate with you because I want that to become contagious, right? So can you give me an example of, somebody when you started out, and I will tell my audience, Drew is more experienced and older than you think he is. He's got this amazing gene that makes him look very young, but he has tenure, which I love, and which is why we're talking today, quite frankly, Drew. But can you tell me about somebody that came into your organization really young and you kind of saw the development and what key behaviors you saw kind of them display to become the leader that they were?
So it always surprises me when somebody who's executing at a high level is younger than I think.
Yeah.
I think that happens to all of us, especially as we go through our careers. I remember early in my career, I was put in that position when I was in my prior career working with attorneys and having to give them advice and consulting with them. I was often younger than their children.
Yeah.
So I've worked with people, I've hired people who have surprised me in that same way. And the qualities that they possess are, what I just described. They understand when I'm asking for something or when another leader is asking for something, that there has to be a why behind it. And they have to understand that from the smallest to the biggest ask. And going back to, what is this person asking for and how do they want me to execute it? And really diving into that is the most important thing.
Yeah. You know what you said there? You said asking the person. And I believe that as leaders, sometimes we don't ask enough questions. And it's amazing when we don't assume and we ask, and we ask it in a way that, it makes them think. But more importantly, we sit back and listen to the response as opposed to just, sometimes we want to fill in the blank and we just want to tell them where they need to go. But when we ask those right questions and those proper things along the way, we get some really good answers, and then we can tailor our approach to how they like to actually be led. So as a young leader, when you started out in your, not now, but when you started out in your journey, how did you deal with that kind of nuance of, hey, I'm younger than than some of my clients' kids. How did you deal with that based on them looking at you thinking, okay, young leader here, what did you have to overemphasize with?
So I had to overemphasize that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so execute at a high level, right? If you want to progress in a career, and it's not just a job that you're clocking in and clocking out at, you have to go above and beyond. And sometimes that's time, sometimes that's effort. And so making sure that you're putting in your best work every time, which is not the same as like being an A+ student. You don't have to get it right every time.
Yep.
But if you did everything you possibly could to make it the best delivery that you could, that's all I could ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then almost show them the road that they need to take and hope that they take it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. You're in a very fast moving organization, right? And when we're in those organizations, I find that lots of leaders actually, they default to controlling the situation because they have in their brain that, this is moving fast. I just need to get it done, right? What have you learned about letting go without lowering your standards? Because through our conversations, I know you have very high standards.
Yeah, I'll jump back to what I said earlier. The letting go of the how is
Okay.
really what it is. A lot of leaders think that more control is going to lead to better results, but really it's just soothing their anxiety. When you define what is good, what I need clearly, you can stop hovering. One challenge that working in a sales organization we run into all the time with our salespeople as leaders is that level of control. The idea that I'm the only one who can communicate with my customer. I don't want anybody else sending out anything else, whether it's the corporate team or somebody else. I want to check everything that my team sends out. Whereas that level of control that's really just there because of anxiety. And so, how do you let go without lowering standards? You define what good means. You give examples, you have checklists, you have appropriate review gates, but really giving your team autonomy with that is the best team.
Yeah. It's evident you have a lot of trust in your team. You just talked about performance reviews. How important is the performance review in your communication with your team?
Like a formal performance review?
Yeah, I'm formal because everybody I talk to, they'll talk about one-on-one coaching or they talk every week with their team. But I have a clear thought process on a structured performance review with my team because in my opinion, it's so important. And I just love to know how you feel about it and why you think it's either really important or how you go about and do it.
Yeah. For me, like an annual performance review, a formal performance review is really a summary of every check in and performance review we've had throughout the year.
Yeah.
And the only outcome that it should have is if we've gotten to this point, it's a positive. I'm going to talk about if we're going to have pay changes, what those are going to look like, where I want you to go in the future, things I want to see from you in the upcoming year, and really touch back on things that we've been consistently checking in on, which is the key part. You have to have those consistent check ins. You can't save bad feedback for that formal conversation. If you have hard feedback to give as a leader, you need to give it right away. If you sit on that, you're just compounding interest on negative things happening within that team member, within your team. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. You said something there that resonated. So it is it's almost the way you worded it. It's almost, this shouldn't be a surprise. Our conversation shouldn't be a surprise because we've talked so many times throughout the year about your performance, whether it's good, bad, mediocre, whatever. We're just kind of formalizing it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. True. You operate at the intersection, I'd like to say, of creativity, compliance, and performance. In your opinion, what skill matters most when tensions start to get high and they rise?
As a leader, the most important skill is a steady emotional mindset. Leaders who can be the rock for their team when tensions are high reflects in the team. If you react with high emotion, if you react with frustration or yelling, frankly, your team is going to feel the chaos and they're going to act on the chaos, which is going to drive a chaotic result. So best thing that you can do as a leader in a high tension environment is be that rock.
I talked to a leader, Drew, about probably 6 months ago, and he said, as leaders, we cannot be part of the chaos.
Mhm.
And it really resonated with me because when you see the leader, like I have a true belief that as a leader, you're always on stage. somebody's always watching you, whether you roll your eyes, whether you're walking with your shoulders back, you look deflated and whatnot. I believe that somebody is always watching you if you're a leader, because you're always on stage. And if it looks like my leader's panicking, to your point there, or yelling, or tensions rise and he or she is acting in a different way, that's going to be contagious with the team. I call that leader led, right? So the speed of the pack moves to the speed of the leader, right? So yeah, I love your just stay calm and think about that before we actually react, right? Drew, hey, as leaders, we have to deal with sometimes when teams or people, they're not performing where we need them to be, right? And they're underperforming. How do you actually, when you look at a situation like that, diagnose it and discover or determine if the issue is clarity, if it's capability, or if it's, do they actually care? What's your kind of method to determine that?
Clarity, capability, or care. They're all a good triangle to look at, if something is underperforming, what to approach. So most leaders that I work with will jump straight to capability, right? Can they do it?
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's actually more around clarity or care. Do we have accurately defined goals, priorities, success metrics? And so, one thing I challenge a team or a team member who's underperforming is, if I gave you those three things, if I said, what's the goal, what's the priority, and what's the success metric, can you repeat it back to me in under a minute? And if we don't have that, that's a clarity problem. Because I love the back and forth of, can you say back to me what I said to you, and see if we're on the same page. And it's a similar exercise.
I love that. Sorry to interrupt you. I love that, by the way. It just promotes simplicity. And when we take complexity out of something, it's amazing how much further we can go. Sorry to interrupt, but I just loved that comment you just made. Go ahead.
Yeah. When it comes to care, that goes back to the EQ, understanding your team. Is your team in a healthy spot? Are they burned out? Are they cynical? Are they emotionally checked out? We work with people. People are people, and things happen in our lives. And so, is that impacting their work? Is it a short term thing? Is it a long term thing? And really getting to know your team on that level is a challenge. There is a balance, right? You're not friends necessarily, but we are people. And so, understand, is that what's impacting, and how can you approach that? Does somebody need to take a day off because they haven't taken a day off in a year? I have people who do that, and I'm a strong encourager of, you earned that PTO, like, take it. And I'm going to make you take it eventually, even if you don't want to, because I need you to take breaks.
Yeah, you're actually better when, the famous saying that if you actually sharpen your saw, right? You're more efficient. And there's this myth that people think, I'm going to show how hard I work. And they almost brag about, I haven't taken vacation for this long and I haven't taken a day off. And my comments usually back to them are, why not? We have to actually demythify that, if that's a word, and just say, like, it's not cool that you're not taking vacation, because you're not showing up as your best self for your team, your family, the people around you if you don't take a vacation. And that mind break and that mind time to actually get to a better place, right? Speaking about work ethic and just people that you deal with, you coach others a lot on visibility and their personal brand. How do you help leaders show up authentically without burning themselves out?
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of personal brand, professional brand, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about it to me is you get to craft that, right? You get to put the message out into the world of what your personal brand is and see how the world reacts. And so when I'm working with leaders on developing authentic visibility, my big thing is, you need to be consistent, but you don't need to be constant. So it's part of a system, right? If you're going to talk about two things, right, just stick to those two things: what I'm building, what I'm learning. Maybe that's what you're sharing out into the world. Make sure that you're consistent in how you're putting out content around that message. Are you using multiple channels, whether it's video, social media posts, speaking at events? And then that don't be constant piece is about boundaries. Nobody needs to be on 24/7. You don't need to be immediately responding to every comment. Be appropriate with it, but have a system, right? If you're going to respond to comments within the first day of when you make a post, great. But don't think that you need to do it 3 weeks later if you're not around. So that's the system I would put in place.
Yeah. And I like that too. It's so funny. Sometimes people, they complain about time and how much they don't have time in the day, but they react to everything. And, they you see an email come in and you'll just see them run to that email. And it's just, hey, It's okay. That person's not at the other end thinking, holy, this guy, I can't believe he hasn't reacted to that email yet or that response. If they needed you right now, trust me, they would phone you or they would get a hold of you right away. You know if something's urgent. And I love that you coach that, because if we're just consistent and we're not burning ourselves out doing everything all at once, our message resonates so much easier, and it actually provides more clarity as well, right? So we're looking at a young Drew to the Drew now, and all those leadership roles you've had along the way. You've obviously established, a bunch of kind of how you go to business. What's one leadership habit that you had to unlearn as your role and your team expanded?
I had to unlearn being the one that everybody would go to get something done.
Okay.
Moving up in leadership, you have to delegate more, you have to trust your team more. But starting out, you have to be, a key person, right? You have to get recognized. And so for young leaders, often it is being the closer, being the executor, being the one person that people can go to and rely on. And so one thing I had to unlearn was how to stop doing that all the time. And so, because if you train everybody in your team or in your organization to wait for you, you become the bottleneck. And when you let other people on the team own the outcomes, even if they do it differently than you would, you build a better team and you set yourself up for more success.
Sure you do. Sure you do. When you look at, well, put it this way, if you were going kind of back to that other question, but I just want a little more detail on it. If you actually look at a young Drew and, in his 20s, all right, and you could give young Drew 3 pieces of advice, what would those pieces of advice be?
I would say write more things down because memory is not a system as much as you may practice it. Uh,
True.
write more things down. I would say don't be afraid to go out and find new opportunities. And what I mean by that is turn a hobby into a side gig. Go to a networking event for an industry you're not in. Try and say yes more and just continue to build on that curiousness.
What a great answer. I have to tell you, the part where you said, try to say yes more, so many leaders that I interview and have on the podcast say that statement in some sort of way. They say, just say yes more, right?
Mhm.
And you also said, don't be the bottleneck, but at the same time, just it's okay to be curious, right? And say, I don't know this, but I want to learn it. And hey, how about I take a shot at it? Right? Do you find it different leading the younger generation? So I look at the younger generation and I think there's some amazing qualities about them that, quite frankly, people in my generation don't have, and they're miles ahead of us. Okay. But what are your kind of nuances when you're looking at the younger generation and people coming into the workforce and you being their face that they look to for leadership? What do you see as, wow, I'm really excited about this, but I also want to tell them, hey, this as well. What's your thought process?
Yeah. When I first started bringing on kind of the younger generation
Yeah.
onto my team, it took me a little while to reconcile like, oh, they don't know some of the things that I consider basics because they haven't been in the workforce. They haven't had years of experience working with teams across Microsoft Outlook. Like just that basic idea of
Yeah.
how to coordinate schedules or, you know, what the standard expectation is for an email response time. And so the challenge has really been making sure that they have the right foundation. And you need to train somebody differently when they're just entering their career workforce and make sure that they understand the unwritten rules that nobody really talks about until you have to have experience to learn them and accelerate that process.
Yeah. What I had to learn in managing and leading younger people was only because I think that they should want this because of this isn't the case nowadays. So I'll give you an example. So when I was, in starting my career out and whatnot, it was, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to outperform the people that are in my pool. I'm going to rise above them. Then I'm going to be in a different pool. Then I'll outperform them. I'll get into a different pool and I'll rise up the leadership ranks that way. Nowadays, they might not want that. So I would think, okay, want to buy a house, get a mortgage, start a family. A lot of times now when I deal with the younger generation, in a good way, by the way, they're not right or wrong. It's just how they look at more experience. They look at more, hey, I actually don't know if I want the mortgage. I might rent for a living. And instead of paying all those additional expenses, I'm actually going to use that extra money to go have an experience in travel for, 2, 3 months. Oh, you know what? I might not want to give you 40 hours a week. I might want to give you 20 and give another company 10 and give another company 10 after that and have different experiences and have different revenues into my income as opposed to just one. Right. So it's just amazing when we get into their work and we think about it a little differently, how it can actually excel their leadership and they actually want to be part of it. Right. As opposed to us telling them this is what you want and this is what you should want. Right.
I mean, Gen Z grew up in a different era, right? I mean, they grew up during the financial crisis. They saw crypto scams, they saw influencers, they saw 24/7 online social media more so than any other generation. And so understanding that Gen Z is risk averse is a core of how they were brought up. And so the idea of committing to something like a 30-year mortgage is scary, but they're also aware of, I want to do these things, but I know that some people are going to try and trick me.
Yeah.
And so it's a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at leaders and kind of how they manage people and lead people, what is one people related mistake that you see leaders repeat as they scale or even when they know better? What's one of the mistakes that you kind of say, oh, that's a mistake. I've seen it before. Don't do it.
Yeah. I touched on this earlier, but it's giving hard feedback
Yeah.
and avoiding that, right? Avoiding hard feedback because they want to be liked. And then they are shocked when somebody leaves, or they're shocked when the team is unhappy and culture collapses. Delaying that conversation is not kindness, it's a detriment to your team.
Yeah. And I like when you say direct feedback, I actually, same thing. I talk a lot about direct conversations. And for some reason, people are scared to have them. And it's just, they'll either do it in a way where they sugarcoat it and they, Drew, your numbers are down. I know you're working hard. I know you're really trying out there. Don't think I'm not saying that you're not working and whatnot, but they've been down for the last 2 quarters. And don't get me wrong. I know you get up and you're working every day, but it's just people just want clarity. And when we provide clarity and we provide kind of where we need them to go and they hear the direct conversation, Drew, it actually strengthens your relationship. And some of the best leaders I've had have had a real direct conversation with me that might have stung a bit when they had it with me, but it was all for the better good, right? I'll give you an example. So I had this one leader, phenomenal leader. And I was working for a big company at the time and I was working on a deal. And the deal was I needed to get his signature and his approval to move forward to the next stage of that deal. And I phoned him and I got to track down his assistant. He's in a meeting. I drove to the location. I hovered outside the meeting room, right, right outside the window so he could see that I was hovering and whatnot. And he finally came out. I could just tell by his face. He looked, not impressed with me, right? And he said to me, and he said it just like this. He said, Jason, you've known about this deal for months. We knew it was coming to, and this should have been done before today, that we're trying to get it done now. And he said, Jason, don't let your disorganization make it an emergency for me. And wow, Drew, it stung, right? Because he is a guy I really respect. I love the guy. I love his leadership. He's a true leader, still to this day, one of the best leaders I've had. But it was something that it improved our relationship because he basically said, hey, guess what? Yeah, this isn't cool the way you're handling this. And that direct conversation or direct feedback, as you put it, changed my game. And it made me think, yeah, he's absolutely right. Once I got in my car and was, wiped my tears away and tried to, pull myself together and whatnot, kidding, of course, I knew, yeah, he had a direct conversation with me and that direct conversation increased our relationship. And he's still to this day, when I'm seeking advice, one of my go-to people that I actually say, hey, what do you think about this? What should I do? Because he'll give it to me, right? And he didn't sugarcoat it. And he just basically said, yeah, not cool the way you're acting right now, right? So listen, I know you're a busy person, so I just want to end with one last question before I let you get back to your busy day. When somebody leaves your team, so they're actually saying, okay, bye, and it could be on good terms or whatever, but when they leave your team, what do you personally hope they are more capable of than when they first arrived on your team?
Yeah, when somebody leaves, moves on to another role, goes on to their next journey in their career, I want to make sure that they have a better standard of communication, especially when it comes to organization and keeping things managed, whether it's projects or anything that they've been working on or what they're going to work on in their next job. I want to make sure that they are staying curious and that they learned something while they were here. I always want my team to grow. I always want to make sure that whether they're here 6 months or 6 years, they walked away with the feeling that I became better as I had this job and that they walk away with confidence that they can own a problem end to end.
I love that. What a great answer. And one of my favorite scenes in Ted Lasso, you quoted that being curious, right? It's one of my favorite scenes of all time in any TV show I've ever watched. Just
Mhm.
be curious, ask the right questions, and it's amazing what happens. Drew, with that, first and foremost, thanks so much for being generous with your time today. I appreciate your leadership style. I actually believe in my heart of hearts that the world needs better leaders and just more communication like this. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast today because there's going to be somebody out there that takes a couple nuggets from it and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to incorporate that into my toolbox to try to be a better leader. So thank you for your time today.
Of course, happy to be here.
If you loved that session and that conversation as much as I did, would love to have you join our People Playbook community in the link below.